A very good morning, our viewer, wherever you are watching us from. This is Indizi TV Africa. This being the 8th day of December 2025. We are almost kicking off, actually almost finishing the year, and we are remaining with at least 2 weeks. Actually, let me just say 2 weeks, because this week has already started and we are kicking on well. And at the end of it, we'll be at around date 15 there. And of course, we'll be at mid-month and almost getting out of 2025. I don't know, wherever you had planned for this year, how far you have gone. This is Indizi TV Africa, and this is Morning Bus with Geff Nyakundi. And my director is James Ondieki. And this morning we had prepared a lot in store for you, from the morning paper review, that is the newspaper review, towards the morning report, and of course the trending stories. And there is a lot that we have in store for you. For example, to talk about what has been going on in the country, and of course what has been trending on social media platforms, politicians talking here and there. And last week, of course, actually on this Saturday, the other day, the late Beryl Odinga was buried at Kango Kajaramogi in Bondo, that is Siaya County. And of course, most leaders attended, including the broad-based officials, and of course other leaders, other politicians in that attended the funeral. Not forgetting that we had what the CS Opio Wandai mentioned yesterday during a church service, and talking about the implementation of the NADCO report. Of course, we had Indini Nyoro talking about the sale of government stakes in Safaricom must be done competitively. And of course, there has been fire, actually the fears of fire from the opposition towards the government on the stake, that is on some shares to be sold, that is in Safaricom to Vodafone company based in South Africa. And of course, we had Rigathi Gachagua talk of it. And Eugene Wamalwa, of course, did and had something to talk about it. And of course, the opposition leaders, they were attending a church service at Christ Dominion Church in Kasarani, that is yesterday. And before we get further, you can be able to engage with us on our social media platforms. That is Indizi TV Africa, on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, as Indizi TV Africa. And as well, you can have a conversation with us on our social media on our SMS number, that is 21575, and of course our WhatsApp number 0711 199890. That's where you can be having a conversation, moving on what has been going on. And of course, don't forget that whenever you are sending your SMS and of course your comments on YouTube or Facebook, I will be reading them thereafter as we move on. And as we kickstart our morning, maybe from the morning, that is the paper review, start from the Standard newspaper, the Daily Nation, and as well as the People's Daily, the Star, Taifa Leo, and of course the Business Daily newspaper, as we move on this morning. And as we kickstart our newspaper, is that there is a lot that has been more so in the world, that is on tourism. And of course, they are talking about on the Standard newspaper, they are talking about the world beasts blockade, that is it's a destruction, talking about the rhythmic thunder of hoofs that marks what may regard as the 8th wonder of the world. The annual wild beast migration in the Masai Mara may soon fall silent. This follows as presidential directive allowing Ehoteria, that is the rich Carlton, to erect structures within the migration corridor. A move experts warn could disrupt the fragile ecosystem, and the conservationists are beside themselves with the consternation as they seek court orders to halt the Karamita's decision that offers only short-term financial gain for a handful of power government figures. That is a story published on page 4. And of course, there was a court case that is regarding on having a hotel built where the 8 wonders of the world, as much as we know it, that is the migration of the wild beasts across the borders, that is Tanzania and Kenya. And of course, some of the experts are giving a warning that if they are going to elect if they are going to do the election of if they are going to have the election of those buildings within the area where those animals mostly do their passing, that is whenever they are from the other country to Kenya, they might be disrupting them, and of course that might be the end of them on what they are terming that it is a calamitous decision that offers only short-term financial gains to for a handful of power government figures, as they are just mentioning it. And that's a story published on page 10. Not page 10, page 4 of the daily newspaper. And there is something that one of these officials has mentioned there. Without the county government regulating tourist behavior and activities, we have seen the habitat degraded so badly. There is a pattern that sidelines local community that are excited with, and of course that are some of the same from the leaders, and of course those who conserve the environment, and of course talking about the wild beasts in the country. Elsewhere, of course, we have seen there the court order, actually the paper, it's a petition from the president. That was a presidential directive on what's supposed to be done on that area. As we keep moving on, and that is what you can be able to grab your morning. That is the standard newspaper, and of course you can have the conversation, of course having to look at the news or the bold stories that are ongoing this morning and published in that newspaper. As we keep moving on, is that the one who had mentioned that is Meltamel or Olidarel, that is Olidapath, that is one of the conservation or the wildlife generations officer, and talking about what might be happening in the near future if these wild beasts will not be allowed to be moving as they used to be. As we move on to the Daily Nation newspaper, the Daily Nation newspaper, the bold headline is all about how Russian agents rally Kenyans to war. How Russian agents rally Kenyans to war, and of course they're saying that the prop that the police are investigating to recruitment agencies that agencies rallying Kenyans with the suspect offers. And of course, they are talking about the collateral damage. The police officers acting on an intelligence tip-off arrested 13 Kenyans and their hosts at an apartment in Nairobi on September 24th in an operation that lifted host an apartment in Nairobi on September 24th that lifted the lead of a thriving business, that is a thriving scandal targeting the jobless and those seeking greener pastures abroad. On a paper, the job seekers sign up for employment and drivers, guards, and related casual jobs with promises up to 300,000 in a monthly pay, but once in Russia, they are forcibly contributed into the military and taken into to the front line in the war with Ukraine. And so they have, of course, they have paid the ultimate price. Their grieving families is still searching for answers on what on their loved ones died in a foreign land for a cause they knew little about. That is a story published on page 4. Of course, the Kenyans trying to get greener pastures in other countries, also those those seeking jobs in Russia and other countries, that is where they have been forced to be the military officers in frontline fighting with, that is between Russia and Ukraine. And that is something that has been that is now under prop, actually being investigated to know exactly what has been going on, and those who have been doing the who has been doing the rallying to them as they are trying to gain or get something for their families. A story published on page 4 on the daily newspaper. Elsewhere, there is a story there published on page 3. It's high season for hotel, games, and festive mood grips country. That is a story published on page 3 talking about the festival season, and of course the picture we are seeing from there, there's some entertainers who are entertaining people maybe in a certain hotel, but what they are talking about is Ravenda Orisa and Francis Kibe, lead members of the dance center Kenya DCK, in performing the classic Christmas fairy tale, that is the Nutcracker at the Kenya National Theatre in Nairobi on Saturday. That is Kenya's tourism sector is roaring back to life, with the coast region and the national park witnessing unprecedented that is feasters numbers ahead of the Christmas and New Year holiday. That is a story published on page 3 on how now the Kenyans are thriving when it comes to these festive season hotels, and of course having guests from different countries to the country Kenya as people are going for vacations, and of course celebrating the festive seasons, that is the Christmas and the welcoming the New Year 2026. That's a story published on page 3. On page 7, we are seeing there that UDA splashes 810 million on party polls. That is, I remember that there are some grassroots elections that are happening this month, actually this week and next week. That is for UDA, and it has given out 180 million on party polls. That's a story published on page 7. And of course, we're going to be able to see the Secretary General having a maybe talking there. That's a story published on this newspaper on page 7 of the Daily Nation. And a little bit up on it, we are seeing a story published on page 6 talking about the preparedness of the Ministry of Education, and they're talking about why Teacher Service Commission is worried about schools in 2026, why the Teacher Service Commission is worried about schools in 2026. There might be there might be a strike for teachers more so. That is the teachers who have been on actually internship teaching the junior school, and of course they had given a warning that it's either they get absorbed in permanent and pensionable, but the Teacher Service Commission said that it does, of course it has the capacity, but there is no funds to do that, and rather they extended or they renewed their contract to the 20,000 teachers for another year until 2026 December. And of course, why Teacher Service Commission is worried about schools in 2026 as we are crossing the year and start the new year. That is a story published on page 6 on this the Daily Nation newspaper. Elsewhere, on page 2 and page 3, dark web of short-term rental debts, dating apps, and online messaging in Kenya. And of course, what we have been seeing happening on social media platforms, more so, it has been a trap for dating sites, and of course people being rallied, of course getting messages here and there on what they are planning with their loved ones, more so those they meet on social media platforms, and what has been happening. There's a story published on page 2 and page 3 explaining what has been happening on the dating apps. Of course, we have been seeing cases of people killing themselves, and of course being killed because maybe they don't do as per the agreement, and of course many of them have been lured into something that they never expected that was going to happen. And that is a story published on page 2 and page 3 in details. And of course, the key story here is the bold headline is about how Russians agents rile Kenyans to war. And of course, there's been something that they have been promised that they can be able to get a salary of up to 300,000 monthly. And of course, they have been told that they go there as drivers, guards, and of course, related jobs. But whenever they get there, they are being forced to be in frontline in military fights that is between Russia and Ukraine. And of course, the government is on toes to do the investigation and bring to book those who are involved in such. And that is the daily newspaper this morning. As we move on to the People's Daily, and of course, the People's Daily here, they're talking about the divide and rule. The divide and rule that has been seen in the President William Samoei Ruto's in the President William Samoei Ruto's government. They're saying that Ruto's 2027 playbook inside secret projects splitting the opposition. And that is a story that has been published on page 4 of the People's Daily, talking about what the president is up to and what it is or what is happening in his government, talking about the playbook that is eyeing the 2027. And here the writer is talking about inside the secret projects that the government or the president is launching or doing here and there to ensure that at the end of it he is splitting the opposition. That's a story published on page 4, and actually it is the main bold headline here. And of course, on page 5 on the upper side of this newspaper, they're talking about why it is a make or a break moment for Orange Party. Why it is a make or a break moment for Orange Party. Remember, since the death of the former Prime Minister and of course the former ODM party leader, Raila Amolo Odinga, there have been a lot of issues in ODM, more so in the top leadership rankings. Most of them talking differently, and others singing the broad-based song. And of course, we have been had members of the party having their critics, of course, saying different statements here and there that is making that is being seen to be making ODM not to be much strong, and maybe there is some inner circle splits between that party from what the Secretary General Edwin Sifuna, who's also the senator for Nairobi County, has been saying, and of course the members of parliament like Kare Pamisi, what they have been mentioning here and there, and others, of course, led by the party leader, the current party leader, that is Oburu Oginga, and other leaders like the ODM chair, that is Gladys Wanga, the deputy party leaders, of course, the governor for Mombasa County, and of course the governor for Kisii County, and other leaders in ODM, that they are now saying that why it is a make or a break a moment for ODM party, or that is the Orange Party, a story published on page 5 on this newspaper. Once you grab it, you can be able to read more on this 8th month, December 2025, and you understand more about what is being said. Is ODM going to make it, or going to just be split and maybe die earlier as this? That is a story published on page 5. And of course, the bold headline on the People's Daily is all about Ruto's 2027 playbook inside the secret project splitting the opposition, that is in 2027. Story published on page 4, and of course his photo we are seeing on the other end. Elsewhere on the Star newspaper, we have a look at it, talking about the Kenyans losing 3 billion daily to corruption in state tenders. That is as per the report that has been given out. And of course, the new figures is up to 2 billion under the previous regime. Actually, the previous regime, that is the former President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, also mentioned something similar to this, and actually exactly to what we are seeing now. And of course, like in a day, Kenya is losing at least 2 billion under the previous regime. And of course, currently, as per the reports that are being given out, that is 3 billion daily to corruption in state tenders and reports. Those who are interested in getting a tender in the government or doing business with the government, then they have to give something, and that is amounting to 3 billion a day. And of course, what a state! It is a rogue state on corruption. That is why corruption is being mentioned to be very high in government offices, and of course, coming down to the police officers, traffic officers, and of course, as we move on step by step. And it's something that, as per the report, the previous regime was 2 billion, but the current regime of President William Samoei Ruto, it has risen to 3 billion. That is 1 more billion on top of the 2 billion that we heard of. And of course, as per the reports that were given last in the last regime, that is in the last government. Elsewhere, that is a story. That is a story that you can be able to have a look at it on page 4 and page 5. That it has been published there to details. And of course, once you grab the Star newspaper, you can be able to read more about it on what is happening, and of course how these things are happening in the government. And elsewhere, on that is talking about the sports. It was AFC Leopards, Mall, Kogalo in Mashemeji Derby. And there we are seeing the celebrations between that is this guy Masaba is being congratulated by the teammate Boniface Queya after scoring a goal against Gor Mahia at Nyayo Stadium. That is yesterday, and that is a game that was being played yesterday at Nyayo Stadium. And of course, Gor Mahia didn't get a win in that games that were being played yesterday. Elsewhere, on page 12, we can be able to see senators clash with the members of parliament of an NADCO bill targeting rogue electoral officials. And of course, talking about the NADCO, that was an agreement. That is a report that was given to the president. And of course, the former Prime Minister Raila Amolo Odinga, and they agreed that they are going to implement the NADCO report. That is before we get to 2027. And now, senators, they are having a different say with the members of parliament over the NADCO bill targeting the rogue electoral officials in the country. A story published on page 12 of this newspaper. And elsewhere on page 11, that is talking about why Trump administration has put Kenya at the center of a new U.S. security strategy in Africa. Why Trump administration has put Kenya at a center of new U.S. security strategy in Africa. Remember, it was last week when the president received an invitation to the U.S., that is the United States of America. And of course, there is a lot of signings that have been done within that is in the U.S. with the current president and the other officials in Kenyan government. And of course, not forgetting other countries in East Africa. Remember, he went there as well as to witness the peace agreement between Rwanda and the DRC. And of course, Kenya got some funds, more so for health sector, and of course other related fields like security. And of course, now there is a publication on the that is on the Star newspaper talking about why Trump administration has put Kenya at the center of a new U.S. security strategy in Africa. Story, you can be able to go through it on page 11 of the Star newspaper. Elsewhere, talking about the sports on page 3, on business, not sports actually, on business, talking about the business on page 3 of this Star newspaper. They're talking about Safaricom big sell and the Coop Bank pay top market. That is talk. It's a story published on page 3 on how Safaricom has been performing and of course doing their business and the sales, and of course Cooperative Bank as they are being they pay top market. It's a talk that is in the town on what has been happening in business, that is between Safaricom and of course Cooperative Bank. A story published on page 3. Elsewhere on page 6, we are talking about the interviews done there at the Kenya on course to becoming oil exporter, says petroleum peers Liban. Talking about the Kenyan economy, a story published on page 6 on how now the permanent secretary talking about how Kenya will be an oil exporter. From that is the word from P.S. Lipan, talking whenever he was having an interview with the Star newspaper, and he's saying that in the near future Kenya will be exporting oil from the country to other countries. And of course the main headline on the Star newspaper is all about the Kenyans losing 3 billion daily to corruption in the state tender. In the state tenders, that's according to the report that has been given out, and of course it's a story published on page 4 and page 5. Previously, on the previous regime, we used to lose at least 2 billion a day, and now it has gone higher by 1 billion. And the story you can be able to go through on page 4 and of course on page 5. Moving on to our second last newspaper, that is Taifa Leo, and of course the main headline is that mtoto wa Simba ni Simba. Winnie Odinga ameonyesha ujasiri wa kushangaza akipambana vikali kudumisha maono ya babake. Urithi tangu afiwe na baba yake pale Winnie Odinga amejitokeza kama mwanafunzi hodari wa Raila Odinga anayejichora kama mtetezi wa wanyonge, mwana demokrasia na mwana mapinduzi angaa chamani ODM aliye tayari kukabiliana na wenye nguvu na mamlaka kila anapohisi wanaenda kombo. Taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa pili pale wakiangazia masuala ya chama cha ODM na bila shaka mwanawe mwenda zake Raila Odinga, Winnie Odinga, ambaye anaonekana na ujasiri mno na bila shaka ambaye atakuwa anabeba bendera ya babake juu, kwa kuwa kwamba ametajwa kama mwana demokrasia na mwana mapinduzi. Anapoona jambo likienda murama, basi yu tayari kuwarekebisha pale. Vidokezo zaidi ni kwamba uchunguzi wa ajira za Wakenya Urusi waanza, yabainika vijana wengi hujipata wakipigania Urusi dhidi ya Ukraine bila hiari wala ufahamu wa awali. Taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa pili katika vidokezo zaidi, na ni taarifa ambayo tumeiangazia katika gazeti lile la Daily Nation kuhusiana vile ambavyo Wakenya hudanganywa kwamba kazi ambazo wanaenda kufanya pale nje, hasa nchi ile ya Russia, ni udereva, kuwa washika doria hapa na pale, lakini kila ambacho huwa kinawafika wakati wanafika pale ni kuwekwa kupigana kwa minajili ya nchi ile ya Russia, vita ambavyo huwa vinaendelea pale kati ya Urusi na Ukraine eneo lile. Na basi serikali imeanzisha uchunguzi kubaini ni kipi kile ambacho kimekuwa kikiendelea. Taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa pili. Na kwingine kwa ukurasa wa 4 ni taarifa ikiwa kwamba ni vita vya wanga na magwanga sasa vya chacha. Ni baada ya kuvuliwa mamlaka na kufungiwa afisi, naibu gavana aamua kufanyia kazi yake nyumbani. Ni vita vya kisiasa hapa na pale, na hichi ambacho kimetokea pale ni kutokana na chaguzi ndogo ambazo zilikuwa zinafanyika eneo lile la Kaspul, ambako tulimuona naibu gavana wa kaunti ya Homa Bay Bwana Magwanga alikuwa anamuunga mkono yule ambaye ni mgombea huru Bwana Aroko, lakini Gladys Wanga naye alikuwa anamuunga mkono Boyd Well ambaye ni mwanake mwenda zake mbunge Were ambaye aliaga dunia kwa kupigwa risasi. Lakini sasa vita vimetokea kati ya hawa wawili, ambako wiki jana tuliona kwamba huyu Mawanga alifungiwa afisi, na kila ambacho kinataja kwamba kuna njama ya kutaka kumuondoa mamlakani, na sasa inaleta vita vya kisiasa katika eneo lile la Homa Bay. Na sasa hivi huyu naibu gavana anatajwa kwamba anafanya kazi kutoka nyumbani. Na kwingineko ni kwamba vidokezo ukurasa wa 3, Ruto na njama ya kuiba Kalonzo, Gachagua adai. Ruto ana njama ya kuiba Kalonzo, Gadawa amezungumza pale asema lengo la rais ni kuyafifisha makali ya upinzani, katika kura za mwaka 2027 pale. Ni taarifa ambayo imechapishwa katika ukurasa wa 3. Ni taarifa ambazo tumekuwa tukisikia mazungumzo ya hapa na pale katika tukitaja kwamba ni the corridors of politics, when they are talking about that the government or the president is trying to take some opposition leaders back to the government. Mwaso Kalonzo Musyoka ambaye amekuwa akitajwa kwa muda zaidi kwamba huenda akajiunga na serikali, na yeye tukamwona wakati mmoja amejitokeza akakana madai hayo, lakini tena tumemwona pale Gachagua ametaja kwamba Rais Ruto anayo njama ya kumuiba Kalonzo Musyoka ili aweze kujiunga na serikali ya Kenya Kwanza, kwa kile ambacho anataja kwamba ni kuyafifisha makali ya upinzani kura za mwaka 2027. Ukurasa wa 20 ni taarifa za spoti, penda spoti, taarifa za spoti pale wakisema kwamba next season hofu Arsenali ikiteleza tena, Manchester City yapunguza pengo la Arsenali kileleni hadi alama 2 tu, ikiwa kwamba ni taarifa ambazo zimechapishwa katika ukurasa wa 2, ukurasa wa 20 pale. Ndio, ni kweli tulipata kushindwa na Aston Villa pale siku ya Jumamosi mabao 2-1, lakini bado nguvu tunazo na tutaendelea kuhakikisha kwamba tunashinda taji lile la APL. Season hii ndio yetu. Hiyo ingine ambao wanasema next season sio sisi. Nadhani kwamba wakati Jemo the top scorer akisikia hivyo, basi yeye anakuwa na furaha kweli, akitaja kwamba hakuna mahali Arsenal tunaenda, lakini kuna hapo mahala ambapo tunaelekea pale. Kwingineko, the Business Daily newspaper, as we crown up our morning, that is a paper review before we get to the that is the morning report. The Business Daily newspaper this morning, the bold headline here is talking about World Bank turns hit on CA to cut core rates further. That is World Bank turns hit on Communication Authority to cut call rates further. That is consumers denied cheaper tariffs as cost-based pricing stalls. And of course, the current rate is set to lapse on February 28th next year. And as we move on, of course, there is a story that is published on page 4 of the new, that is the Business Daily, talking about the World Bank has reignited the focus on the rate mobile phone operators in Kenya charge each other for calls made across the network, saying the Business Daily newspaper saying that denying the cheaper calls for the sector regulators projects, mentioning that it might be something that will be higher, that is as from 28th of 2026. That is a story published on page 4 of the Business Daily newspaper. Elsewhere is that on the other side, of course, they're talking about the energy rationing fears as electricity demand jumps to the new peak. Of course, this festive season, we have been seeing some areas being shut off for electricity rationing in the area, and there's a story published on the Business Daily newspaper on page 7 talking about the rationing of electricity in the country. And of course, the peak demand for electricity hit a new high of 2,418.77 megawatts. That is in November, the 5th such feat this year alone, casting the spotlight on Kenyans' ability to meet the fast rising demand or risk rationing supplies. Of course, something that we have been experiencing in the country, and maybe we have been seeing notices from Kenya, that is the KPLC, Kenya Power and Lighting Company, talking about they are doing some maintenance and of course some rationing in the country. And of course, there is a high demand for electricity in the country. And moving on the ticker side, talking about Kenyans' malaria cases up to 27% as global funding crisis deepens. That is talking about on the ticker side, of course, the malaria cases, that is reported malaria cases in Kenya increased by 27% last year, pushing the country higher in global disease track ranking. A new global report shows that, of course, malaria is still in the country and is still increasing. Elsewhere, Gulf energy routes for rail transport of Turkana crude oil. Of course, the Gulf Energy wants the government to extend the railway to Rokichar in Turkana County by 2030. That is to transport crude oil to the port of Mombasa, marking a departure from the state's easier plan to build a pipeline. And of course, it's a story published on the Business Daily. Elsewhere, banks urge CPK to cut benchmark costs of loans to spur lending. And of course, the commercial banks have urged a further cut in the indicative lending rate of the Central Bank of Kenya to help boost the base of lending to the private sector, and of course reduce the loan defaulters. And on the top of this newspaper, talking about the exchange rate still remains at 129.41. That was on Thursday and Friday. And of course, we saw there the exchange rate of 0.08%. And of course, that is how the Kenyan shilling versus the USD is doing. That is the buying and selling price of it. And of course, elsewhere on Karo Musioka's story on page 9, they're talking about family businesses either embroiled under the weight of entitlement or so into global capitalism. That is a story published on page 9. Elsewhere on page 19, talking about life is a love for cycling rekindled. Of course, those people who like cycling, it is, of course, a return of it. Many people now are using it in keeping fit and, of course, reducing body weight, and of course doing the exercises where they engage the full body, your hands, your legs, your vision, of course, your mindset and everything whenever you're cycling. And then it happens that you have of course you are ensuring that you are doing the exercise, the body, that is the full body. And elsewhere, the main the bold headline is here talking about World Bank turns hit on the CA to cut call rates further. And of course, a recap on what we have seen on our newspaper is from the Standard newspaper. We saw that the World Beasts blockade, where they are giving some controversies, and of course talking about the hotel that is supposed to be built. Of course, it was given a go-ahead, and it was a government or the president's directive. But now those who mostly look at, we call them the consternation, they seek a court order to halt that building of the hotel where the wild beast normally used to cross. And of course, the Daily Nation talking about how Russian agents rally Kenyans to war. And of course, they are being lied to that they were going to work as drivers and etc. and etc. But at the end of it, they get themselves fighting for the Russian country. That is between the war that has been seen there between Russia and Ukraine. Elsewhere, we saw why Teacher Service Commission is worried about schools in 2026. And of course, we saw 180 million given out on the party polls, that is under UDA. And of course, it's a high season for hotels, game parks, festive mood grip that is in the country. And of course, something that they mentioned that now the country more so, that is the tourism industry is now growing. Also on the People's Daily, we saw that Ruto's secret, or the playbook inside the secret project splitting the opposition in 2027. And of course, the Star, we saw Kenyans losing 3 billion daily to corruption in state tenders. That is according to the report that has been given. Previous regime, it was 2 billion. But now, currently, it is at 3 billion. And of course, AFC Leopards, Mall Kogalo in Mashemeji Derby. And of course, that is Gol Mahia didn't win yesterday's football match that happened at Nyayo Stadium. Also on Taifa Leo, we saw that they are talking about mtoto wa Simba ni Simba, Winnie Odinga, ambaye anataja kwamba tangu aviwe na babake, basi Winnie amejitokeza kwa mwanafunzi hodari wa Raila Amolo Odinga, kwa kila ambacho anakiona hanyamazi kikiwa kibaya, yeye anakizungumza jinsi ambavyo kilivyo. Tumeona vita kati ya gavana na naibu wake pale Homa Bay, gavana Wanga na naibu wake Mawanga. Sasa vita hivyo vikisonga hadi sehemu nyingine, kwa kwamba sasa hivi naibu gavana anafanya kazi kutoka nyumbani. Ni baadhi tu ya taarifa ambazo tumekuwa tukisifuatilia katika magazeti, and that is what we had prepared for you in the morning paper review. We are taking a short break. Once back, I will be taking you through the morning report, and of course later on the trending stories as we keep moving on. And of course you can be able to talk to us via our social media platforms, that is Ndizi TV Africa, on our Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram as Ndizi TV Africa. And of course you can be able to have a conversation with us via our SMS number, that is 21575, and of course our WhatsApp number, that is 0711 1998 and 90, and we can be able to keep the conversation going. Don't go too far. We'll be back in a short while.
This festive season, treat yourself at Canal Park Hotel, just 5 kilometers from Kisii town off Kisii-Kilgoris Road. Enjoy luxury, comfort, and a 10% discount on all accommodation services. Book now and celebrate in style. Canal Park Hotel, the pride of Kisii.
Mteja mpendwa, ni wakati sasa wa kujinyakulia aina ya flash disk kuanzia 8GB, 16GB na vilevile 32GB. Vilevile earphones, wireless headsets, unajipatia wireless microphones tofauti kwa bei nafuu. Yale ambayo unafaa kuyafanya hivi sasa ni kwamba unapiga simu kupitia nambari 0739318606. Yote unayapata kwa bei nafuu popote ulipo.
Je, wajua kwamba mapishi si kazi tu ila ni sanaa? Njoo tujifunze mapishi mapya katika runinga ya Ndizi TV Africa. Hapa ndipo tunapika, tunajifunza, tunakula, tunasherehekea na kucheka kidogo. Ungana nami kila siku ya Jumanne kuanzia mida ya saa 2 usiku katika kipindi chetu cha Pishi Bora. Hapa ndipo tutakuwa tunapika vyakula mbalimbali ambavyo vitakuwa vinanukia, kama vile mchuzi wa nyanya, tunapika kuku kitunguu, tunapika wet fry na vyakula vingi zaidi. Njoo tujifunze pamoja na tulete ubunifu jikoni katika kipindi chetu cha Pishi Bora. Ungana nami Ronelfa katika kipindi cha Pishi Bora, tulete ubunifu jikoni.
a strive everybody longs for. Human beings will spend their time online searching remedies for conditions challenging them. Some will go to medical facilities seeking medical help, while others will use herbal means to keep their health hazards. I am Chemutai Kirui, and every week on Afya Yetu, we open the doors for life-changing conversations from wellness and nutrition, preventing diseases, managing chronic illnesses, and even mental health. We bring expert advice, real-life stories, and practical solutions that touch every part of your life. Join me, Chemutai Kirui, on DZTV Africa Afya Yetu Health Show every Friday from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. and be part of the change.
Je, wewe ni mmiliki wa aina ya gari aina ya Alto, Probox, Harrier, V8 na Lexus? Jipatie brake parts kwa bei nafuu hivi sasa. Vilevile oil filters kwa gari aina ya Toyota na vilevile Subaru. Ili upokee popote ulipo, piga simu kupitia nambari 0739318606.
Alright, welcome once again to the morning buzz as we are taking you through the morning report on what happened yesterday at the trending stories later on that will follow. As we start is that the national government is tightening the reins on infrastructure delivery, launching a tougher regime of unannounced project inspection aimed at exposing discrepancies between official reports and of course work on the ground. Deputy Chief of Staff Eliud Walo is warning that the contractors who abandon sites overstates their capacity or operate under the multiple company names to secure tenders will face blacklisting and removal from future government projects. His team, accompanied by local and national officials in Kericho County, inspected several flagship developments, insisting that the taxpayer must get fully value for their money and that no contractor will be shielded by the political network.
The national government will intensify unannounced inspections of flagship projects and move to blacklist non-performing contractors as part of a stronger effort to ensure taxpayers receive value for money. During an inspection and verification tour of national government projects in Kericho County, the Deputy Chief of Staff in charge of government delivery, Eliud Walo, noted that the tour revealed significant discrepancies between progress reports submitted in Nairobi and the actual status of projects on the ground. He warned that some contractors were operating under multiple company names to secure several government tenders only to fail during implementation due to limited capacity
of the implementation status of projects. We are also witnessing a situation where certain contractors are using different company names and bidding for many government projects at the same time. But when now it comes to implementation, they run into capacity issues because it is one entity under different names.
Walo called on the procuring entities to strengthen due diligence during the procurement process by conducting site visits and verifying the ownership of equipment, machinery, and technical capacity before awarding contracts.
We want to urge our procuring entities to do more due diligence at the procurement level. One, to verify that they are not awarding more than enough projects to one given contractor, because this is going to pose challenges in implementation. They must also ascertain that whatever documentation the contractors furnish them with during the procurement stage is not just paper, but it's actually the position on the ground. So they really need to do site visits and even ascertain what type of plant, equipment, and machinery these contractors have within their promises to ascertain the veracity or otherwise that the contractors actually have the capacity to implement the projects.
He cautioned the contractors against abandoning projects or failing to complete them, emphasizing that such firms would be blacklisted and barred from future government engagements.
But in equal measure, we want to caution contractors that is moving forward is going to be very risky to take up government projects and then abandon them midway or be unable to implement them to a logical conclusion. Because you run the risk of being blacklisted. Yeah? You run the risk of being blacklisted.
He also criticized contractors who ignore summons from implementing agencies and national government administration officers, stressing that political protection will not shield underperforming firms.
We are witnessing a situation also where certain contractors, in total disregard to lay down protocols, ignore summonses from our relevant government implementing officers and even the Ngao officers who are the eyes of the national government. They don't even attend meetings when they are called for those meetings because there are certain politicians hiding behind those companies which are implementing the projects. As and when you have been onboarded to undertake a government project as a contractor, it is none of our business whom you know. That's not what guides us is the contract that you have signed with the government. So let's not have a situation where certain contractors think that they are untouchable because they know certain politicians. It's not going to help you moving forward. We will go as per the provisions of the contract. And if you are not performing, there are, of course, all ways and means of getting recourse. Because we are basically, as government, implementing these projects utilizing money which belongs to taxpayers. The government has got no money on its own.
In addition, he issued a stern warning to politicians who procure tenders through proxies and subsequently fail to implement projects within the required timelines.
We want also to caution politicians to stick to their core business of politicking as opposed to venturing into doing business with government through proxies. This is one of the greatest challenges we are facing in implementation of projects because we award projects as government, various government agencies, award government projects, but when it comes to implementation, even after government has made payments, you find that the monies are diverted to other ventures, so the projects end up struggling. Yeah, so we really need to get to clean up this construction space so that we don't have politicians masquerading as contractors, yet they are not contractors. We have many young men and women in Kenya who are well educated and have got construction companies who can actually implement these government projects as opposed to awarding contracts to politicians.
Lennox Odede reporting for Ndizi TV Africa from Kericho County.
Elsewhere, the Kapsaret Member of Parliament, Oscar Sudi, is pushing back against critics of President William Ruto, saying Kenyans will never again resort to ethnic violence and should instead embrace national unity. Speaking firmly against divisive rhetoric, Zudi accused the political distractors of fueling unnecessary tension and urged citizens to reject tribal animosity. He emphasized that Kenya has moved past politics of fear and must remain focused on peace and cohesion.
Tunajua pia shughuli zote. So watoto wetu wa area ya town at least wazazi watasaidika sana. Na hiyo ndio inamaanisha tuache mambo ya uchochezi na ukabila. Tupendane, tuwe kitu moja, tuwe na kimoja. Sio lazima upige kura vile mtu anataka, lakini tuheshimiane na tupendane. Tuwe kitu moja. Unajua mama watu wengi wanahubiri siasa ya ukabila. Sisi kama jamii fulani, sisi kama watu fulani. Ukisikia watu kugusa watu kabisa, tabia wa sisi kama watu wa Mungu, sisi kama watu tunaabudu Mwenyezi Mungu, sisi ni watoto wote wa Mwenyezi Mungu. Na hiyo ndio nataka niimishe sana. Kwa sababu tunaenda mwaka mpya na tunajua mwaka ujao siasa itaanza kuanzia mwezi wa sita kwenda huko mbele. Na niwaambia na nitarudia tena. Isifike siku ya kura. ifike siku ya kura, ati wewe unafunga kitanda, matres, watoto, unaenda Kisumu. Wengine wanafunga kitanda, ile fikiri yake, silikuwa sehemu na nini, anaenda Kakamega. Wengine sikila wanafunga nini, anaenda Kisikia. Sisi wote ni Wakenya. Kuwa ni pigo vile huko, pia kuwa vile huko, ujiulize swali. Nikiwa Landas, nikiwa Escos, kama ninapata basari yangu hapa, kama watu wangu wanasoma hapa, kama mapato yangu ninapata hapa, kanisa langu linaenda Landas, ni nini ikifika siku ya kura unataka kwenda safari? Hiyo nataka niwaombe kwa heshima kubwa. Na niwatangazie, hakuna siku nchi ya Kenya wakapigana tena kwa sababu.
Elsewhere, in a striking show of political realignment, the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua and Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka shared a stage during a church service in Kasarani yesterday, signaling what they described as a new strategic unity within the opposition. The leaders criticized ODM for what they claimed was what they called a susceptibility to government influence, and Ford to champion what they called a national liberation mission, and their real joint appearance showcased a renewed push to consolidate the opposition ahead of future politics battles, more so in the 2027 general elections.
Haywire, theft, left, right, and center. And that is why I want to assure the people of Kenya that we in the united opposition are clear in our mind that we shall stay as one. At the right time, we'll give you one candidate to face William Ruto. And let me also explain. There has been a lot of efforts by Ruto and company to woo Dr. Kalonzo Musyoka to his side. They have been trailing him everywhere and inviting him to join them. I want to confirm that my cousin here cannot betray the people of Kenya. Yeah? Number two, when that has failed, they think that they can put a wedge between me and Kalonzo Musyoka. Let me tell the people of Kenya, the relationship between me and Kalonzo is not about leadership. It is not about politics. It's not about the presidency. It is family. Sasa watu ya familia wanaweza wachana? Blood is thicker than water. Si ndio? So nyinyi mnafikiria mnaweza tenganisha familia, msahau. Bishop, sisi and our cousins from Mukambani, tumeenda hasara kubwa sana for not sitting down as a family. All our decisions going forward will be family decisions. Nilisema last Sunday watu wakajaribu kunikachifu kusema ya kwamba sisi si wajinga. Hii Nairobi Wiper iko na umaarufu kubwa sana. For a long time wamesaidia ODM. So tumesema there is no way we are going to have friendly fire. There is no way Wiper will fight DCP or DAP-K. Where Wiper is strong, DCP will support Wiper. Where DCP is strong, we will request Wiper to support DCP. And in the process, tufagie viti yote Nairobi. Na hatutaki kutenga ODM. Tunasema ODM, please. Nyinyi mumesaidiwa na Kalonzo siku mingi. Sasa mkitoka kwa Kalonzo muende kwa Ruto, si mutapotea? Tunasema mkuje tuketi karibu. Hata kama mtaki kuketi na mimi, si muketi na Kalonzo, mmekuwa na yeye mwaka 10.
Elsewhere, in political momentum in Mount Kenya region appears to be shifting after a group of young people declared the Deputy President, Professor Kithure Kindiki, to be their preferred regional spokesperson. The youth accused the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua of misleading as the mountain's kingpin, and of course demanded a more accountable, a modern form of leadership. The endorsement adds a new dimension of the region's succession politics, especially as the 2027 general elections draws closer.
Tumeamua we will support the government because of what the government is doing to us as students. This is likes of internships, bursaries, help. Tuliona jana juzi wakati wa graduation ya KMTC, the deputy president aliongea sana kuhusu help, and hayo ndo mambo yenye yanatuhusisha sisi kama wanarika, juu most of us we are in school. And from Embu County, we say we are behind the government and we will support the government juu hatuna government ingine. Ni hii tu yenye tuko nayo, so we have to support it.
The outcome in Mbeere North is not just a casual electoral result. It is a clear endorsement by the people of the Mount Kenya region of His Excellency Professor Kithure Kindiki as the only spokesperson, political stabilizer, and the principal leader in our region. So we therefore state unequivocally that any other individual posturing and masquerading out there as the Mount Kenya kingpin without the people mandate, that they only speak for themselves.
Ruto tangu achaguliwe, kazi amekuwa akifanya vizuri, na hadi kwa wana youth, hadi the tertiary students amekuwa akituwakilisha vyema. Ya kwanza ni venye alikumbuka wale, unajua pale shuleni kuna wale wanafunzi wametoka kwa familia za rigi ya chini na wengine wametoka kwa familia za juu. Sasa pale kwa model ya kupeana hadi help, akakuwa ule mwanafunzi mwenye ametoka pale chini anaweza kusaidika sana, na tulifurahia juu ya yale. Lingine ni venye nitasema shukran kwa our Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki, juu after hapa kwa mlima kumekuja mambo ilikuwa inaletwa na wale viongozi wenye walikuwa wanataka kutupoteza njia. Amejaribu kurudisha watu wa mlima kwa njia iliyofaa, na tuseme kama sasa kwa wale watu wa muungano wa ile pande nyingine unasikia wanakuja hawasemi sisi ni wa Kenya, wanasema sisi ni watu wa mlima. Na kwa sisi wacha tuseme si wote tunafaa kukua viongozi kama una read wa Kenya wote, you talk to Kenyans, not to Mri.
Now, the Public Health and Professional Standards PS Mary Muthoni is urging Kenyans to exercise extreme caution during the festive season amid a surge in unsuspected meat and rising cases of food poisoning. The PS says the government is strengthening collaborations with the counties to ensure around-the-clock meat inspection and updated safety guidelines. She also warned against the widespread habit of buying medication over the counter, noting that drugs resistance is becoming a real danger. And of course, Muthoni revealed that a major crackdown on counterfeit medicines is imminent, and even as she encouraged well-off Kenyans to pay social health insurance contribution for their households.
I have seen the other day a number of people who were hospitalized after taking food in an event. Please, let us ensure that food handling is taken with the highest level of hygiene. Let us ensure that the hygiene around our homes, in the hotels, in the restaurants, is at its highest. I am calling upon all veterinary officers and public health officers to ensure that the inspection takes place across the country. We want people to eat meat that is inspected. This is a Christmas period, and people will be moving from one point to the other. I'm asking and pleading with our drivers, please drive safely. Injuries can occur But where we can prevent, it is important that we drive safely on our roads to avoid accidents that are going to cause miseries in our households. I want to urge each one of you to equally take this time to have screening at the community level. Our community, the many issues to do with the over-the-counter medication, and we have also seen Pharmacy and Poisons Board, they have issued an alert around drug reaction. It would be important that if you are affected, that you report on the same. We are urging people to stop medicating or prescribing themselves over-the-counter medication, because this, if you're not a skilled workforce, or you're not a doctor, you're not a clinical officer, do not prescribe yourself. Again, I'm talking about the young people who are at home right now. It's during the holiday. We saw the other day during the World AIDS Celebration Day, HIV and AIDS is still very rampant in our communities, and it is important to note that even teens and children, any person can get HIV. It would be important that we take charge and take care of ourselves during this festive season.
Elsewhere, public servants across the national government departments are being challenged to take a more proactive role in communicating the achievements and, of course, the ongoing efforts of the Kenya Kwanza administration. Officials say effective messaging is critical to helping citizens understand the progress of the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. Ministries and agencies are being urged to relay accurate, timely and reliable information that keeps the public informed and involved in the development initiatives.
As officers serving in the national government, I think we have got a moral duty to communicate to the public what the government is doing in our various spaces, to communicate to the public what the government is doing. Because the government, the national government, even as we speak, is doing a lot of things in Siaya counties, to be specific. Can you imagine, for instance, if I take the case of energy, which I'm more conversant with for now, okay? We have got an allocation of some 1.7 billion shillings for rural electrification this financial year. Last one, rolling into this one. And I am sure if we went through all these lockets, you will see some program or project. And going forward, again, I think it's also important to know that it should be in our interest as officers working in the national government to help guide our people, that if possible, we don't just stay in government now, but we continue being in government even beyond the next.
Of course, as we move on, 56 minutes past 7 a.m., I'm taking a short break of 2 minutes. Then I'll be back as we move on with informing you on the latest, more so on the morning report. And of course, thereafter, we'll be having a look at the trending stories and of course inform you more on what has been going on. And of course, you can be able to engage with us on our social media platforms, more so on YouTube and as well as our Facebook page where we are live. And don't forget that you can also send your SMS and your WhatsApp message via our number 0711 19 98 90. And of course, our SMS number, that is 21575. Don't go too far. I'll be back in a short while.
festive season, treat yourself at Canal Park Hotel, just 5 kilometers from Kisii town off Kisii Kilgoris Road. Enjoy luxury, comfort, and a 10% discount on all accommodation services. Book now and celebrate in style. Camel Park Hotel, the pride of Kisii.
Mteja mpendwa, ni wakati sasa wa kujinyakulia aina ya flash disk kuanzia 8GB, 16GB na vilevile 32GB. Vilevile earphones, wireless headsets, unajipatia wireless microphones tofauti kwa bei nafuu. Yale ambayo unafaa kuyafanya hivi sasa ni kwamba unapiga simu kupitia nambari 0739318606. Yote unayapata kwa bei nafuu popote ulipo.
Alright, welcome back as we move on with the morning report. And now to Kisii County, a section of clergy from Kisii County is calling for political tolerance and unity ahead of the 2027 general elections. And the religious leaders speaking during a special prayer event in Ogembo warned politicians against empty rhetoric and fuels tension and distractions from genuine development. They urged leaders to engage youth meaningfully in national programs and to prioritize peace, dialogue, and constructive participation in Kenya's democratic discourse.
Ninaomba serikali yetu iweze kufika mwananchi karibu, tufanye maendeleo sisi wote kama Mkenya, tuweze kuungana mkono, tuache mambo ya marumbano, tuache mambo ya vita, tuweze kujenga nchi yetu tukufu ya Kenya. Serikali yetu iweze kuangazia masuala ya vijana, wanapofanya programs zao waweze kuleta vijana wawaweke karibu, wasipawie vijana, maana ndio wingi katika jamii. Ili tukiungana pamoja, Kenya yetu itakuwa bora kabisa na kila mtu atajihisi yuko sawa.
Naiomba serikali yetu waunganishe watu wetu wote waje pamoja ili tuweze kufanya maendeleo, maana pasipo amani maendeleo hatasonga.
Rais wetu tumuombee mema atufanyie maendeleo.
Elsewhere, a large bushfire swept through Oromilan and Emorioye villages in Narok County last night, destroying tens of acres of farmland before firefighters managed to contain the flames. The blaze, which stretched late into the night, threatened the homes and nearby plantations. At the time, the country is expecting or is experiencing an extended period of hot and dry condition, as predicted by meteorologists. Authorities are yet to establish the exact cause of the fire, even as the residents remain on high alert. Elsewhere, a political storm is brewing in Kakamega after County Assembly Speaker James Namatasi demanded the immediate release of 2 MCAs arrested during the violent protests in Isulu and Bushiangala. Namatasi says the legislature nominated MCA Annie Mulalwe and Ikusha South MCA Akidusi Riyai were detained unlawfully, adding that Riyai's whereabouts remains unclear, and the speaker has called for transparency from the law enforcers, warning that the detention could escalate political tensions in the county.
Bila kushtakiwa unconditionally, Mheshimiwa Anne Mulwale, Arcadius Liyai, bwana ya Anne Mulwale, watoto wa Honorable Anne Mulwale waweze kuwa free, because hakuna makosa mheshimiwa amefanya, hakuna makosa mheshimiwa Arcadius amefanya. Alete structured way of participation, waweze approach the leaders, tuanze kufanya civic education kutoka kwa grassroots.
Nataka kuambia wale ambao wameleta siasa ya ikolomani, gold mining, msimamo wangu, it has always been for the people of Ikolomani. Amen. Kwa sababu there is no way you can get an investor ambaye anakuja kuhamisha watu.
Now, as we move on, 7 people died yesterday and several others are nursing injuries after a deadly early morning road accident that happened along the busy Mombasa-Nairobi highway in Taita Taveta County. The crash, which occurred in the Miasenyi area, involved a matatu belonging to Kinatwa Sacco that was heading towards Mombasa. Authorities are piecing together the circumstances surrounding the tragedy, and survivors receive treatment, and of course families begin the painful process of identifying the victims.
So haikuwa nzuri sana, watu wamekufa, wengine wameumia. Asijui hata dereva ako wapi. Ajali ilikuwa ya gari na lori. Sikujua ni dereva alikuwa anapateka. I don't know what happened. But mimi nilijipata, siwezi kuongea, siwezi kuamka, siwezi songa ndani ya gari. Mungu akanisaidia. Nikajisukuma mpaka nikatoka. Alafu wasamaria wema wakanisaidia singeweza kutembea.
Today in the morning at around 5 a.m. we've received an RTA, road traffic accident, from a matatu that was traveling from Wote to Mombasa. We received 11 casualties in our hospital. We had 7 fatalities. 4 of them were male and 3 were female, unidentified right now. They're in the morgue. In the ward, in the casualty, we have 7 referrals to Mombasa. We are referring them. Patients are stable currently. Some patients had multiple fractures. We stabilized the fractures and referred them to Mombasa respectively. And then also we have 2 discharges, patients who came in and then we reviewed them and we discharged them immediately, and 1 admission.
And that is where we wrap it up in our morning report. Don't go too far because there is a lot that we have aligned for you, more so in the trending stories. And of course, yesterday there were celebrations. That is after the AFC Leopards won against Gor Mahia. And of course, they celebrated until late night at Nairobi CBD. And of course, other stories, trending stories from our neighboring country. Remember, today is on 8th, and of course, there was a said protest to be happening tomorrow on 9th. And of course, you have seen the officials from the government and of course the police have condemned the protest planned. And of course, they are saying that it's not up to the standard that is supposed to be met during the preparedness for the protest in that country, that is in Tanzania. And of course, they have said that no, of course, they're not going to allow the protest to continue. And of course, I will be letting know on what Ndindi Nyoro has said yesterday. And not forgetting that the opposition leaders, they have been saying, of course, mentioning that they will be moving to court to challenge the government more so on the selling of the Safaricom shares that the government has been owning in Safaricom. saying that it's against the law, and that is some of the trending stories I've aligned for you. And don't go too far as I take a short break. Once back, that is what we'll be looking at this morning. And of course, this is TV Africa Morning Bus. Ensure that you keep the conversation via our social media platforms. That is our WhatsApp and of course our YouTube and Facebook pages where we are live. And on our WhatsApp number, that is 0711 19 98 90. You can be texting us over there. And of course, sending an SMS to our SMS number, that is 21575, as we keep engaging you this morning. Don't go too far. I'll be back.
Everybody longs for. Human beings will spend their time online searching remedies for conditions challenging them. Some will go to medical facilities seeking medical help, while others will use herbal means to keep their health hazards. I am Chemutai Kirui, and every week on Afya Yetu, we open the doors for life-changing conversations from wellness and nutrition, preventing diseases, managing chronic illnesses, and even mental health. We bring expert advice, real-life stories, and practical solutions that touch every part of your life. Join me, Chemutai Kirui, on TV Africa Afya Yetu Health Show every Friday from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. and be part of the change.
Je, wewe ni mmiliki wa aina ya gari aina ya Alto, Probox, Harrier, V8 na Lexus? Jipatie brake parts kwa bei nafuu hivi sasa. Vilevile oil filters kwa gari aina ya Toyota na vilevile Subaru. Ili upokee popote ulipo, piga simu kupitia nambari 0739318606.
Katika maisha ya kila siku, changamoto za kisheria sikosekani. Iwe ni haki zako kazini, masuala ya ndoa, mikataba mbalimbali, hata kwenye ardhi. Karibu kwenye Sheria na Jamii, kipindi kinachochambua masuala ya kisheria kwa undani zaidi. Hapa tutakuwa na wachambuzi wa sheria wa kusaidia wewe mpenzi mtazamaji kuelewa ni kipi kile sheria ya Kenya inasema.
Ni vizuri utumie sheria ambazo zimewekwa, the laws that are in place to help you control the properties even when you are dead.
Kwa mob justice, wale ambao wanahusika katika mob justice wanaweza kuletwa mbele ya mahakama na wakafunguliwa mashtaka, either iwe ni a murder charge or a manslaughter charge.
Kila siku ya Jumapili kuanzia saa 2 hadi saa 3 usiku hapa ndani ya TV Africa, nami Geff Nyakundi. Sheria na Jamii, tukielewa sheria tunajenga jamii yenye haki.
Mteja mpendwa, ni wakati sasa wa kujinyakulia aina ya flash disk kuanzia 8GB, 16GB na vilevile 32GB. Vilevile earphones, wireless headsets, unajipatia wireless microphones tofauti kwa bei nafuu. Yale ambayo unafaa kuyafanya hivi sasa ni kwamba unapiga simu kupitia nambari 0739318606. Yote unayapata kwa bei nafuu popote ulipo.
Every Wednesday night, join me for powerful stories and informative stories that will touch your heart and also will be informative on Ndizi TV Africa, where we will be having able and ambitious. Join us as we empower voices that need to be heard and also encourage the inclusive voices in the society, one story at a time. We educate, we inspire, we break barriers and remind the world that disability is not inability. Tune in to Ndizi TV Africa every Wednesday as from 8 p.m. as we celebrate and empower the able and ambitious in our society. Ndizi TV Africa, beyond Africa.
Alright, welcome back as we kick on, of course, once again on our last segment, that is the Morning Bus Show. And we are looking at the trending stories from all over the country, on our regions, and of course the 47 counties, not forgetting from our neighboring countries as well. And of course we start from what happened yesterday. Of course, Waziri C.S. Luku was talking and saying that Mount Kenya has impressed Ruto's two-term chorus, and says that the region will support President Ruto for the 2 years family until 2027, and of course he will be re-elected again and having full support from the Mount Kenya. And of course we have been seeing the Rankos, who is the kingpin from Mount Kenya, that is starting from the former Deputy President Geoffrey Gachagua to the current Deputy President Professor Kithure Kindiki, and of course the other leaders from the area, not forgetting that the former President William Samoei Ruto, as well as the former President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, who is of course the Jubilee Party leader, trying to get back to be the person who says it in the Mount Kenya. But currently we have been seeing Rigathi Gachagua saying that he is the one who is the kingpin of the Mount Kenya. And of course, Luku was having a conversation and of course talking yesterday that the Mount Kenya region will be packing up the former president, actually will be packing up the President William Samoei Ruto, the current president of Kenya, as they are moving on with the Kenyan Kwanza administration. Elsewhere, the senator for Siaya County, that is Oburu Odinga, and who also happens to be the ODM party leader, is stressing that there is no leadership vacuum, and of course calling for ODM unity, says that he is ready to take the responsibility of leading the party, and dismisses speculations that about the internal disarray or leadership uncertainty within the party, and the caution elected leaders and the party officials against against suggesting that ODM needed restructuring or transition talks. He urges supporters to ignore divisive commentary that is from political rivalries and online factions, insisting that the party remains steady under his leadership as the party leader. And of course he was making these concerns during the burial of his sister, that is Beryl Oginga. Elsewhere, other members of parliament and of course relatives and friends from the political arena attended the burial that happened on Saturday. that is on Saturday, that is on the 6th of December 2025. Elsewhere, the chairperson of the National Roads Board and of course the former cabinet secretary Aisha Jumwa has officially joined the Power Party and says it's now time to return home and to build a home party and focus on strengthening it towards the 2027 general elections. Remember that Aisha Juma was one of the members who supported the current regime, and of course he was given a docket as the CS for gender, and of course later on after the president made changes in his cabinet, then she didn't make it back, and then later on she was named as the National Roads Board, that is the National Roads Board chair in the country, and of course he is now singing the song of the Power Party. And remember, the Power Party is related to the Speaker of the Senate, that is Amason Kingi, and of course these are the faction of the Kenya Kwanza government. Elsewhere is that the Member of Parliament, actually the Homa Bay Member of Parliament from Homa Bay constituency, George Kaluma, has stated that the Luo community is prepared to deliver 4 million votes to President William Ruto in the 2027 general elections. And he has emphasized that the political landscape is shifting, that the community is ready to align with a leader who demonstrates a commitment to development, inclusivity, and genuine national unity. According to Kaluma, this support will be driven by a desire for stability and a fresh political arrangements that promises tangible benefits for the region. And he was mentioning this from what he's saying, that the president had promised something for the Luo community, and he is on course of delivering and of course ensuring that he is keeping the promise to the people. And thus Kaluma George went ahead and said that the Luo community so far has 4 million votes, and they will be delivering the 4 million to the current President William Samoei Ruto come 2027 during the general elections. Elsewhere, the presidential aspirant, of course, David Kenani Maraga, was yesterday at Rimuru for the UGM Party's Young Aspirants Convention, where he met with the young people from Rimuru constituency and of course the larger Kiambu County, having discussions on what he is eyeing to do with the young people as they give as he is eyeing for the presidential that is race for 2027, and of course trying to engage the young people and encouraging them to come on board as to be part of the UGM party that is the party led by the former Chief Justice Emeritus David Kenani Maraga. Elsewhere, from besides actually outside our borders, is that the group of soldiers from West African country, that is Benin, have announced on national TV that they have ousted the President Patrice Talon and seized the power. Elsewhere, they mentioned that the Benin Interior Minister says the coup attempt by a small group of soldiers has been trashed by the military. And that is something that we'll be keeping following. And of course, we saw the African Union chairperson dismissing and of course putting some actually denying that is sidelining the country from what he termed to be something which was unprecedented to the African Union and of course the area of the Western Africa area and of course the entire African nation. Elsewhere, the opposition leaders led by Rigathi Gachagua and Kalonzo Musyoka yesterday. They worshipped at the Dominion, that is at Christ Dominion Church in Kasarani. That is yesterday on Sunday. And of course, the duo was seen to be together after some sentiments that were made like 2 weeks ago. That is actually like a week ago. That is when the former deputy president mentioned that they have agreed with the party leader, that is the Wiper party leader, that DCP will be clinching that is the most serious and the most important positions in the Nairobi county. That is from the governorship, that is from the governorship, the women rep, and of course the MCAs and the other posts in the Nairobi county. And they saw eye and eye for the first time during the church service at the Christ Dominion Church in Kasarani yesterday. Elsewhere, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, and of course who is the DAPK party leader, welcomes Boni Aluale to DAPK party after the UDA fallout. Says the senator has been unfairly targeted within the ruling party. Remember, this came after Boni Aluale was outside last week from the position of the majority chief whip of the Senate Parliament, after he was seen supporting the opposition during the by-election in Malava constituency. And later on, the warning was given that whoever was against the government or supporting the Kenya Kwanza candidate, then he will be punished through a punishment that now we saw that Boni Aluale was outside from his seat as the chief whip of the Senate Parliament. Elsewhere, the DCP party leader, that is the former deputy president Rigathi Gachagua, has invited ODM party to officially join the united opposition. As says DCP, he will cooperate with ODM as they have been doing with Wiper. And of course, these sentiments are coming amid the deepening split in the ODM party, since now the all leaders in ODM party, from the party leader to the deputy party leaders and of course other members of the party, are not aligning themselves with what they want exactly. More so, others supporting the broad-based government and others talking ill about it and not ready to support it until 2027 and beyond. And of course, Rigathi Gachagua was making this call that ODM can work together hand in hand with the DCP, as what the DCP party has been doing with the Wiper leader, of course, the Wiper party. Elsewhere is that the IEBC summoned the political parties, independent candidates, and civil society groups to a post-election review following the continuous by-election on November 2027. This after the by-election that happened, now that it has summoned the political parties, independent candidates, and of course the civil groups to a post-election review following the contentious by-election that is that. Ndindi Nyoro of Kiharu is saying that the sale of government stake in Safaricom must be done competitively for Kenya to get optimum valued and benefits. Of course, Ndindi Nyoro was the first person to point fingers to the government and say whatever they are doing currently is not good, and of course saying that the shares that they're selling out and the price that is currently being sold is not competitive and is not good at all, and it's not something that they will buy. And of course saying that one share currently is at 45, and of course the government is selling it at 10 shillings less from what he had expected them to do. And elsewhere, of course, we saw, I mentioned earlier on about the FC Leopards. They played yesterday against Gor Mahia. at Nyayo Stadium, and of course they won, and they were celebrating all day after their win at Nairobi CBD until late night. That is yesterday. This is, of course, they have won this. It is long since AFC Leopards won against Gor Mahia, and for the first time they are doing the celebrations all over the city. Of course, they were doing the celebrations all over the city, and of course, congratulations to AFC Leopards for that win. As we keep on moving on the FKF and as well as the Kenyan Premier League. Elsewhere, that is the Energy CS, that is Opiyo Wandayi, has criticized opposition leaders of what he termed as false claims and regarding the implementation of the NADCO report. Remember, they have been saying that there are splits in the opposition and, of course, the pro-democracy government, more so between the Senate and, of course, the national government on who is to lead what in the that is in the NADCO report. That is, the Senate is differing from what the National Assembly or some of the members of Parliament are suggesting as per the implementation of the NADCO report. And elsewhere, as we move on, almost crowning it up, is that the Tanzanian police officers have banned the proposed demos on 9th and says that arrests and the detainees of 116 people so far, those who have been seen to be planning the demonstrations that are supposed to start tomorrow. And of course, we have seen that is Tanzania to be given warnings from different countries in Africa and as well as outside Africa, not forgetting United Nations, the USA, Netherlands, and other countries. You can name them, that they have given a warning, and of course they have given a warning to their citizens living in the country that they should be very keen on what to do and where to be walking around during the proposed, and of course they said of course, they say the demos that are supposed to be happening tomorrow, and others we saw like some days ago, others fleeing the country in the fear of the said demonstrations that is going to happen tomorrow. And so far, the Tanzanian police have, of course, banned the proposed demos on 9th, that is tomorrow. And of course, they have arrested and detained 116 people since this started on all the time the plan started being said that these demos were going to happen. And of course, we saw the other day that the government or the president of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu Hassan, gave a statement and of course said that the outside, of course, the neighboring countries and of course other people not living in the country, that is in Tanzania, they are feeling of course they are finding and of course feeling the demonstrations more so on what happened during the 29th of October general election that happened in Tanzania, and where of course we had the post-general violence where people died, and of course some of them, they are not known where they are, and mostly some of the teachers who work in Tanzania from Kenya, some of them were killed and not yet found, and of course their bodies have not been found, where we saw other countries giving warnings to the government of Tanzania, giving it time to give the bodies back to their families, of course their loved ones, to be buried, and of course to be responsible on what happened in 2020, actually on 29th, 2025 during the general elections in Tanzania. Elsewhere is that World Bank now says they are still paying high correlates because the CA has delayed cutting mobile termination charges, and of course with the current rates ending in February 2020, that is 2026, it's pushing for cheaper cost-based pricing for lower tariffs. That is for consumers. Of course, we saw those stories on our Business Daily newspaper when we were doing the morning, the newspaper review this morning. And as we move on, maybe to check on your comments and of course what you have say, what you have sent through our social media platforms. maybe I start checking from that is Facebook to see your comments here and there as we almost come to an end of our morning bus show. Of course, another thing that has been trending is the Kaspul. There is an outreach as Kenyan Kaspul holds a press meeting with the local TV stations in Nairobi that calling out Ral Madogos for standing with Tanzania. And of course, what Ral Mado what Ral Mado had published during reporting during the protest in Tanzania. That is during the general elections that happened in Tanzania, where people were killed, and of course the reports that were shown and of course broadcasted by BBC after a review of it were very saddening. And of course Kaspul is saying that Tanzania should be respected, and even mentioned that the East African countries, of course, Uganda will be having its election this coming year, that is on January, and of course said that the election will be very peaceful, and of course Museveni will be winning it. That is as per Right, as we move on in this morning bus, and of course saying congratulations to those who have been watching us, and of course thank you. I'd seen Nancy saying that he's following live on the Facebook page, and of course Omosorubegas from Nakuru County, Minyo Yaumbu saying that it has been good following up more so on the morning paper review. And of course, we say thank you for following up on DZTV Africa this morning, and of course the morning bus show, and that is where we wrap it up. This morning being the 8th of December 2025, and of course it is 35 minutes past 8 a.m. And thank you for following, and keep following in DZTV Africa on our social media platforms as in DZTV Africa. I've been your host this morning, Geff Nyakundi, and of course my director has been Bana James Ondieki. Thank you, and keep on following in DZTV Africa. Bye bye for now. Let's meet at 1 p.m. news bulletin.